Good morning and welcome to Kunsan Payal Joling. And it's our pleasure to present a teaching by Jetsunma Ahkon Lhamo this morning. The teaching this morning is entitled How Dharma Hooks Your Mind, and it was originally given in 1991. So thank you for joining us, and we will begin.
So the children have taught us about hatred, greed, and ignorance, and about being directly aware of the content of our mind streams. Interestingly, we're not as good at that as they are. They are honest enough and free of preconceived ideas sufficiently to be able to spot these difficulties in their own mind streams without rationalizing them. Well, it's true, occasionally they may blame things on their brothers and sisters, but when boxed into a corner, they're willing to take responsibility for the content of their mind streams. We, on the other hand, are less willing to do that and actually are quite a bit less aware than they are of what's going on within our minds. We don't have a real sense of it. The difficulty that we have is so deeply ingrained and so habitual as to the degree that we find ourselves somewhat unresponsive to the content of our mind stream, not understanding it, not knowing it, not being able to view it in any real way. I'd like to use as an example this morning, and I'm using obviously the children's class as a lead-in, if you will, to go further and use the example of how we are hooked into the Dharma. And now, hooked is not a word that any of us likes, because we like to think that we are individuals and we made a choice. And we like to think that here we are Western minds and we had a smorgasbord of things that we could choose to do, and instead we chose the Dharma. We like to feel that our choice of accepting Dharma, to practice Dharma, or meditation or spirituality in any form, was a conscious choice and therefore reflects our individuality, reflects that individuality in some way, makes a statement about it, describes it. We really like to think that. And to some degree that's true. Obviously, you chose to either get up or not get up this morning. I chose to not get up, but I had to get up anyway. You chose to come here. You chose to say the prayers or not say the prayers. At every moment, of course, you make choices. But each of us, upon entering the spiritual path, and particularly upon finding Dharma, has a different agenda, a different series of events that actually hooked our minds. There was something that got our attention. And I have often students come to me and say, well, they love to tell me the events that led them to accepting the path, to accepting Dharma. When I was a little girl or a little boy, I had this experience, and then I had that dream, and then I had this event, and there was a sequence of events that they clearly see are the events that brought them to the Dharma. And then upon finding the Dharma and beginning to practice the Dharma, or their particular spiritual path, whatever it might be, they approach that path, that Dharma, in some particular way that they feel is unique to them. And that unique approach, of course, they feel defines them, probably confines them actually. It's a little Freudian slip there. In fact, I would say definitely that's the case. But they feel that it defines them and helps them to see more about themselves. For instance, one person may be extremely scholastic or academic in their approach, and they might come to Dharma thinking to read all of the books and understand all of the terminology, and have a fast, very tight, very defined understanding of the different methods that one utilizes to enter into Dharma, the different results that one might have, the different cause and effect relationships, the different philosophical thoughts that are the foundation of Dharma. And then other people might come into Dharma thinking that they responded as usual to the feeling, that they responded to the feeling of Dharma. And that they came here and they had a good feeling. They felt spacious or blissful or something like that. And that's their traditional way. Their traditional way is to respond to an environment by feeling spacious or blissful or uncomfortable or uptight or something like that. And they feel that they can tell by their response really what the scene is, really how to accept the path. And of course, there are all of the different shades of gray in between these two ways. Some people, when they come to Dharma, have a particular, very intense, sometimes emotional response. And sometimes that response can be remarkable. And for all intents and purposes, you might think it was right on the money. For instance, and I'll tell you this story in complete confidence, since you and I are the only two in this room. And we're not being filmed in such a way that thousands of people might eventually see this. Once there was a student that was practicing meditation for some time, a few years, but she hadn't met with any Dharma yet. She came to the center, and I happened to be in the gift store, checking out the new collection of earrings, as is my wont to do periodically. And she happened to go into the bookstore as well, probably to check out books. But anyway, we met in the middle. She had never seen me before. I had never seen her before. But she had this immediate response to me and knew that I was the teacher here, knew particularly that I had been her teacher. This is what she felt so strongly. She felt it's an incredible sense of remembering something. And you could tell that she was the kind of person that burnt hot and fast like paper, not slow and steady like coal. So she responded in a very volatile way, in a very immediate way, in a very emotional way, because she was a very emotional person. And her emotional response was so striking, so cutting, so explosive, that in fact, what happened to her was she remembered. She had a sense of how to do a very professional looking, very right on the money set of 3 prostrations. So she felt that she knew that I had been her teacher. She felt this really close relationship. She felt this sense of accepting me as her teacher. She immediately did 3 prostrations and then burst into tears because she had no idea what she'd just done. It's quite a remarkable story, isn't it? Do you know what's even more remarkable about it? I haven't seen her since. Think about that. Obviously, her emotional response, whatever it was that hooked her, was not enough. Neither is enough to be moved by the environment or blissed out or relaxed or spacious. It is not enough to come here and feel like this is a good place. It is not enough to come here and think with a mind hard as horn either that one is going to learn the method and going to learn it in the same way that one would learn to add a column of numbers. It simply is not enough. Because in any of those three methods, which really are extremes, and you must understand that in every response that every sentient being has, there are millions of shades of gray. So you may not be exactly like any one of those people. But there are millions of shades of gray, and you have to think that somewhere in there you are having a response that fits into a slot somewhere. But in none of those cases was there sufficient understanding or sufficient cause to really continue on the path. Each one of us, when we meet the path, meets up with some kind of hook. Interestingly, the hook in meeting with our mind streams is very much like the content of our mind stream. If we have the habitual tendency of being very tightly academic, very intellectual, very perhaps even superficially, but tightly understanding of certain facts, being able to put certain facts together in a certain way, probably when we meet the Dharma, that hook will match the fabric of our mind stream. But that doesn't make that particular event a perfect event. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't change. And if we are the kind of person who really has a kind of mental laziness in which we allow ourselves to be extremely passive and only respond to an environment and in fact take no real responsibility for it, or don't engage in any activity that would fortify our understanding, but instead, in a very passive way, simply respond and think that that kind of response is sufficient and that we somehow ought to do what we usually do, which is to flow with it. That kind of activity can, in fact, leave us flat, leave us in a lurch. And the reason why it will leave us in a lurch is that there is no real meaty understanding that goes with that. If we rely on our feelings, on our sense of environment, on the comings and goings of our mind as it flows in some way, then we're in a very precarious position simply because the coming and going of our mind will continue to flow. And it may flow right out the door. There's a real good chance of that, because we're not exerting any real control or any real understanding. And furthermore, if we have the habit of floating with things and just allowing our minds to react to our environment, well, there are many things in cyclic existence that are bright baubles of feeling. One could feel very good and very peaceful and very spacious here. One could feel very good and very peaceful and very spacious on top of a mountain somewhere in North Carolina. One could feel very good and very peaceful and very spacious because of a hormonal change that occurs within the body. All of these things are possible. Many, many different events can produce that kind of fluctuation in one's mind stream, but it is an extremely unreliable and unstable fluctuation, and no real change is made. If allowing one's mind to simply float were the answer, then that would be the definition of enlightenment, and it's not. It is merely another kind of intoxication, a narcotic event, another kind of intoxication with samsaric or cyclic existence. In the same way that grasping tightly onto intellectual information or intellectual posture, grasping tightly into superficial academic facts is a kind of intoxication with phenomena. So is taking feelings which may be more subtle and perhaps seem to be looser, and simply allowing the mind to ride on the surface of them. That would also be a kind of narcotic experience. Harder to define in that the feeling nature is so much more subtle. We might think that we are more spacious, but in fact, we are just as intoxicated. And in fact, are probably developing the habit of sloth, or responding to the habit of sloth. Now, let's say that we were the volatile type. And this is actually a very common experience. People come here and they have perhaps some response to the teacher, whether it's myself teaching. I'm only reporting what has happened. I'm not making any claim that I'm likely to be responded to. But some students will have a response to me as a teacher, or if there is another teacher teaching, they will have a response to another teacher, and it will be a deeply emotional response. They may have a deeply emotional response to the auspicious umbrellas that are hanging, and think, oh, I remember this from a past life, you know. Or they may have a completely emotional response to the decor of the room, the exoticness of the sand mandala that is covered by the Celestial Palace mandala image. They might have an exotic response to something, you know, in our area, the stupa, the great stupa, or the Thousand Buddha altar. Any of those things might invoke a very strong emotional response. We have had that happen, where students will come in and just break down in tears, thinking, this is it, I found it, this is it. And they'll be really hot, really hot. And I've had my students come to me who are still fooled by that kind of thing, and they'll say, this student is really moved, something's really happening here. This is really a phenomenal meeting between the student and the Dharma here. You know, my response to that is usually quite neutral. I feel that that is not a good indication. It doesn't surprise me that paper burns hot, and it doesn't surprise me that paper burns out very quickly. And those people who respond emotionally and in a very volatile way, their minds are like paper. The content of their mind streams are like that. It isn't stable. I more value the response of a student who can come here and look around and say, okay, I'd like to learn more about this. I really would like to see what's happening here. But I see something that's good. I see something that's worthy of investigation. I would like to continue. That kind of response I can have much more respect for. It seems to be a more stable kind of response. At any rate, what we should recognize is that whatever response we are having is exactly like the content of our mind streams. Would it be possible for us to see anything in any different way? Of course, anything that we view is a direct reflection of the content of our mind streams. And so, if we come here and we feel that we have a wonderful response to this place, and it feels very spacious, and it feels very nice, and we feel very relaxed, we have a sense of bliss, we might want to examine our minds for a kind of laziness, a kind of lack of diligence, a kind of lack of true insightfulness, and a lack of stability, a lack of real view. Now, on the other hand, if we come here and have a sense of eruptive emotional experience, we might want to examine our minds for the real need to cool our jets on an emotional level. We might want to examine our mind streams to see if the content of our mind streams is such that we are too inflamed, too reactive, and too unstable in that reactive mode. And if we come here and stand outside of our experience to the degree where we say, I'm going to learn all of the cause and effect relationships, and I'm going to really understand this matter, and I'm going to study the philosophy, and I'm going to learn this thing and become learned about this, then we should examine our minds to see if our minds are so prideful about our own intellectual process that perhaps we have little capacity to really change. We should examine all of these things. Examine our response. It's very difficult for us to do. And to some degree, you have to be skillful about it, because if it is a sense of connection with a teacher that brings you to the path, well, if that's the hook, it's okay at first. But you have to go beyond it. And if it's a sense of peacefulness and spaciousness that brings you to a temple and makes you want to come again, that's the hook. It's good. You should be with that for a little while, but be willing to continue growing and change. You have to be willing to change and really apply yourself. And on the other hand, if it's a desire to learn this technology that has brought you to the path, then that's your hook. You should be with that and use it, but then also learn how to change. The upshot of all of this is that we have to learn how to take responsibility for the content of our mind streams. Westerners particularly have a certain kind of arrogance. It's a very deep arrogance, but it's an arrogance that can sometimes appear so subtly that we don't recognize it. We don't realize that we're actually being extremely arrogant. We feel that we are sophisticated and experienced, and we've received a lot of information about what it means to be an individual. In fact, one can think that perhaps that's how it is that we have the karma to be born in this place and in this time and under these conditions. It's that we have the cause and effect relationships, or the karmic relationships, of assuming the importance and solidity of our own individuality in a very definite way. And this assumption can bring a sense of arrogance that causes us to stand outside of ourselves and not get the big picture at all. There's a real danger in that. In that we can assume that it is right for us to be a certain way because that is our nature, and that everything else in the universe has to change for us, that it has to actually adapt itself for us. Even in our, let's say, devotion to the teacher and to the path, when we actually find the path, whatever response it is that we had to the teacher, we really think that the teacher should stick to that. Whatever it was that we saw in the teacher in the beginning, if it was great compassion or soulful eyes or a witty way of presenting the Dharma or purity or whatever it was that we saw in the teacher, we really think that the teacher's responsibility is to not change so that we can be happy. Or if we see the path and we decide for ourselves that the path has certain characteristics, we really think that the path should remain as it is and not reveal itself in any way other than the way that feels comfortable to us. And if at any point the path reveals an aspect of itself that we do not understand, certainly isn't our job to change, is it? Certainly isn't our job to stretch a little bit and accommodate ourselves. The path shouldn't have disappointed us. Don't you think? You must recognize that I'm being ridiculous. These are ridiculous thoughts. Obviously, when one comes to the path or when one comes to the teacher, one should do so realizing that one is not yet enlightened. One should do so realizing that one is locked into cyclic existence, that is to say, the cycle of death and rebirth, and that one has no means of exiting cyclic existence. One has not realized the primordial wisdom state. One has not realized the illusory quality of phenomena. One is still addicted to desire. One is still addicted to phenomena. One is still convinced of the solidity and reality of self-nature, of its inherent reality. Therefore, with those situations going on, one cannot exit cyclic existence. There is no exit. No natural exit. It will not come to you from somewhere else. So you come to the path looking to change that view. And that's what Vajrayana is all about. One wants to realize the primordial wisdom nature. One wants to realize the Buddha nature, to awaken to that nature that is the true nature. And in order to do so, one must realize the inherent emptiness of self-nature, and one must realize the illusory quality and inherent empty nature of all phenomena. One must realize the sameness or suchness, the same taste, the same quality of all that is. One must awaken to the natural state, that is to say, a state which is free of contrivance, which is luminous and innately wakeful, but in a non-specific way. And one will not awaken to that nature by clinging to the need to define self through intellectual pride. Neither will one ever awaken to that primordial mind stream, take oneself wherever habitual tendency dictates. Neither will one awaken to the primordial wisdom nature by being fixated and drunk with one's own feelings. That will never be. One has to take certain steps. There is method to be followed here. One has to realize the faults of cyclic existence and what actually makes up cyclic existence. One has to fall out of love with phenomenal reality. Secondarily, one has to realize that there is a solution, that there is a cessation to the sufferings of cyclic existence. And that cessation to the sufferings of cyclic existence is found in the enlightened state, which is the naturally wakeful state, the state free of all confusion associated with specific or fixed awareness. That is the clinging to self-nature or the clinging to phenomena. One must awaken to that state. It is as unlikely that one will awaken to that state without effort, continued, aware, considered effort, as it is that we can catch wind with a lasso. In fact, according to the teaching, it is much less likely. In fact, according to the Buddha, it will never happen. Never. Because one is so deeply involved in habitual tendency and so deeply enmeshed in cause and effect relationships that bring about this experience of continuum that we all experience now. And because it is the nature of this continuum to continue, that is simply its nature, there is no natural exit. One must apply the path. One must actually engage in method. One must understand also that method is inseparable and indistinguishable from the very mind of enlightenment itself. That the basis of method is the Buddha nature. Therefore, method and nature are indistinguishable. To apply method, therefore, is to awaken to the foundational nature. Method, when correctly applied and based on the reality of our Buddha nature, will always result in the fruit of realization. Therefore, one should realize that the inherent Buddha nature, or the seed, the path or movement or method that is applied and the fruit or result, that these three things, seeming like three separate branches, seeming like things that you could choose one of, and in our ignorance we often do, saying, well, if my nature is the Buddha nature, why don't I just sit back and wait for it? In fact, those three branches are not branches at all. They are the same taste. They are the same. They are indistinguishable. And in the end, they are realized to be the sphere of truth, free of any contrivance and free of distinction. Upon accomplishing the path is the fruit. Upon accomplishing the fruit is the nature. These are the things that we must remember and apply ourselves diligently. There is no other way. Any other way is the continuation of the narcotic experience of addiction to our own continuum, our own fabricated continuum. It is not enlightenment, and it will never bring about the result of becoming the Buddha is awake. So think about this, and think also that in that case, since cyclic existence is faulted, and since there is no natural exit, and since there is a cessation of suffering, and that cessation is called enlightenment, therefore there is not one moment to lose. Why would one waste one's life on anything else? To put it bluntly and in colloquialisms, it's the only game to play. There's nothing else to do except revolve as a drunk person revolves, intoxicated with our own continuum. Those are the two alternatives. If we think bluntly and understand deeply, those are the only two things. If you're not doing one, you're doing the other. Can you, like the children, take responsibility for that? Can you, like the children, look and see the content of your own mind stream? Can you, like the children, take up arms and fight the war against hatred, against greed, against ignorance, against jealousy, against pride, and against sloth? Time will tell. The great thing about time, though, is that it starts right now. And if you take what you've heard today and let it disturb you a little, enough so that you change, enough so that you choose the method, enough so that you apply yourself in such a way as to move closer, ever closer toward enlightenment, then it has been a beneficial day. But if you experience the class as one tastes a good food or a bitter pill, just tasting, and that's all, you've wasted your time and mine. So think about that and remember that the result comes with the practice. And therefore, make some choices. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing with us this teaching by Jetsunma. We hope that it's been beneficial and that you enjoy it. We do show these teachings. They are pre-recorded, and we do show them twice a week so that I don't know about anyone else, but it's easier to schedule when you have a time and date you can watch them. But you can go back and watch them again and again on YouTube, which is where you probably saw this one. So it's KPC's YouTube channel. So we're going to try to get them more organized on there, but you can watch them at any time. In addition, we do have a meditation that is done live on YouTube Saturdays and Sundays at 10 a.m. by one of our nuns here at the temple. And those we keep copies of on YouTube as well, should you want to go back and meditate with somebody or review some of the tips that they've given you in that particular class, or just kind of be with somebody. So that's there for you as well. We do in the evenings on Facebook, a Medicine Buddha practice. It's a condensed practice, Jetsunma, composed really from, condensed from other sources, and specifically for this time of COVID, when so many people are sick or dying, or there's people you want to pray for, or it's been a crazy time. And Medicine Buddha has been, I think, instrumental in helping all of us feel that we have a tool to benefit those in that situation. And I've seen amazing things happen with people that should have been much worse and aren't. So you're welcome to come anytime at 7 p.m. It's about a 15-minute or so practice. It's very short. It's in English. And you can join in with people, and you can add in your prayers and join in with some of theirs, and feel the camaraderie and feel the depth of benefit that there is with practicing in a group. So anyway, enjoy. It's there for you. Daily we do a soak offering practice, and Monday through Friday it is a Namchu soak at 5:30. Saturday also a Namchu soak at noon, and Sundays we've changed to Rigzen Dupa, which is live at the Guru Rinpoche statue. So if you're in the neighborhood, come on by and join us in person out at the statue. We do request masks, N95s or comparable, and bring your own chair, and something to sit on and stuff. We're not like stocked over there, but it's just inside the entrance to the Peace Park. On the opposite side of the street is the temple, and it's at 2 p.m. It goes for probably just under 2 hours, like an hour and a half, somewhere in there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful practice. It's beautifully sunny today, cold, windy, but beautifully sunny. And Jetsunma is very excited for us to be doing these practices over there. She feels that this is going to bring tremendous benefit for the situations that we're facing in the world today. And so we will continue to do them Sundays at 2. Willing and the creek don't rise. So that's what's happening here. If we can get it on Facebook, we will do our best. We might be able to get it on YouTube. Kunla's going to try today to see if she can get it on both. But we do not have much internet over there. So at least not right now. It will come someday, but that day is not today. So we'll see what we can do. We'll do the best we can. But, join us at home if you want. But it's a great opportunity to come and practice together live, because we haven't done that in a long time. And we're looking forward to it. Anyway, so prayer room is open on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And so come and join us if you can take some time and, come across the street, spend a little time. If it gets too cold, you can come over and, pray in the prayer room. We look forward to seeing you here anytime, anyway. The outside is open from dawn to dusk every day, and then with the addition of the prayer room, open on the weekends from 11 to 4. Again, mask up inside, and let's see. And if you wish to make an offering to Jetsunma, having heard one of her teachings, and if you feel like you've gained some benefit, you can do that. Her PayPal is Jetsunma Gift. It's all one word, and it's in the chat there, JETSUNMAGIFT@gmail.com. And you can go there for that. So any of these events that you want to go to, if you want to find out more information and figure out how to get there, go to tara.org and go to the events calendar, which is under Meditate, Pray, Study. And you just look at the events calendar and you click on where the event that you want to go to, and it will give you a link to download the practice, and also a link or whatever you need to get online, location directions. It's your little GPS for the Buddha Dharma. So anyway, thanks again for joining us, and we always love to see you. Have a wonderful week.